Welcome to Barnyard Language. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language. Honest talk about running farms and raising families.
In case your kids haven't already learned all the swears from being in the barn, it might be a good idea to put on some headphones or turn down the volume. While many of our guests are professionals, they aren't your professionals. If you need personalized advice, consult your people. Welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. We're happy that you're joining us here on the podcast again today. Katie, what is happening in Iowa this week?
It's cold. It's real freaking cold. It's actually warmer today, but it's been real freaking cold.
What? February in Iowa is
Lots
not
of snow.
tropical.
I know, right? Um, and my passport finally came, so I bought some plane tickets because I'm getting the hell out of here. And because I apparently don't understand how to get the hell out of here, I'm going further north. Um, so there's that. That's right, folks.
Do you
I'm
want to
going to
tell our
Arlene's
listeners where you're
house.
going? Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna
No,
actually
I'm
see
going
each
to.
other in person, in the real.
I'm out of here. I'm going to Arlene's.
Yeah,
For
up
anyone
north.
who's missed this, we've only spent time together in person once, and that was only for lunch and cheese shopping. So
Yes.
I'm gonna I'm gonna
And
go
that
see
was back
Arlene
in
and her
2019?
family, and
Is that right? Was it 2019?
I think it was
It's a while
2018.
ago. Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's a long
The
time
little
ago.
boy was a baby, so
Yes,
that was
yeah, he sat on my
2018.
lap for so Katie could finish her sandwich. So yeah, he was definitely a little
Yeah,
boy.
yeah. So
Yeah, so I'm
very
filling up
exciting
our
stuff.
weekend, Katie.
Um,
I don't have any final plans for you yet, but if there are Eastern Ontario listeners who want to join us for, I don't know, supper or something, I'm going to put it in the Facebook group. So join the
well, that'd
Facebook
be a
group,
lot of fun.
and then you can hang out with both of us in real life.
I did have a good laugh too, Arlene. You posted on Instagram a couple weeks ago, I think, about going to Costco and that you had stocked up. And for a minute, I thought it was stacks of toilet paper, and I was like, "Geez, what is it? Like? How long does she think I'm staying?" And then I realized it was paper towels because you're a dairy farmer, and that made a hell of a lot
Yes.
more sense.
Yeah, that's
Because
the
I was like,
stacks of
"Wow,
paper
she's
towels.
really stocking up there." Arlene, what's going on in Canada?
Well, exam week is done, so that is good. People got through their first round of exams, and today is actually, we're recording on Wednesday. They threw in a midweek day off, which I didn't realize was happening. So, well, I guess I saw it. Maybe the school emailed last week to remind us about this day off, so it was not as much of a surprise. But yeah, I wasn't really expecting a Wednesday with the kids home from school. And I am back to volunteering in the grade 3 classroom. I had to pause there for a second and remind myself what grade my youngest child is in. I've got 4 kids, so I can't always remember. So I've been doing some reading with those little people, and it's so cute because they're still at the age where they're excited when someone's mom comes in and they like fight over who gets to read with me. And that probably isn't going to last for too much longer because they're all 8, turning 9 in the grade that they're in. So they're starting to turn into big kids. But for now, they still line up to read with me. So that's pretty fun. And I don't think there's too much else. We've had a run of bull calves in the barn lately, but we did get one nice heifer out of a cow. So the grandmother, her name is Apple Crisp, and we bought her at a sale for a family who were going out of dairying. So we bought her, and she's kind of special. She not like in a bad way, but she's always in a box stall because she needs a bit more lunch space. So she's our one cow that kind of gets her own housing. And so she's very spoiled, and you have to go in and pet her when you arrive first thing in the morning because she likes attention too. And so she's Apple Crisp. Her daughter's name is Strawberry Crisp. And then this year, our naming convention is back to A's. She wasn't born here. She started with an A, but we're back around at A's. So we've been strategizing on all the apple-based desserts for this calf's name. So we settled on apple dumpling. So the whole
Oh, I
dessert
would have
line.
assumed it would have been Applejack, but okay.
Is Applejack an cereal? What is Applejack?
There is an Apple Jacks cereal, but
Okay.
Applejack is, I want to say, apple brandy,
Oh,
which I think
okay.
is a dessert, but okay.
Yeah. I
Um,
don't even know if we
yeah.
have that. Oh, yeah, maybe we do have that. Anyway,
Huh.
Brand differences again, Katie. I don't think we have Applejack cereal either. But yeah, we went with the dessert.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
good. At
on
least I
the
can sleep out in a barn with Apple Crisp while I visit.
yeah,
I'll just
yeah, in the
kick
box
it in her
top.
box stall with her. Yeah, that'll
Yeah,
be
she's got
nice.
room. So on the teacher front, I think our guest today, I know our guest today is a teacher, so you guys will be happy to listen to her.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's
Today on the podcast, we're talking to Melissa Nelson, who's joining us from Northwest Iowa. So, Melissa, we start each of our interviews with the same question, and this is a way for you to introduce yourself to our listeners. And we ask, what are you growing? So, this can cover crops, livestock, kids, businesses, and all kinds of other stuff. So, Melissa, what are you growing?
Right now, we are growing a couple kids and some fat cattle and a few businesses too.
That is exciting. Okay, so we need all the details. How old are the kids?
I have two right now. They are 2.5 and 4.5. So little and fun, but also a little insane at the same time. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
And what kind of cattle are we talking about?
So my husband and I, my husband works full time with his dad and brother, and we have 2 feedlots and a cow herd. Right now, we are feeding out calves that we bought from my parents, which is kind of fun for the two of us to kind of work on together as a family, I suppose. So we've got black calves, baldy calves. My parents sell black bulls, so there's a lot of black calves in the feedlot right now.
And do you guys grow some crops as well? Obviously not this time of year because we're
Yes.
recording in January, but the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's a little chilly. By the time we listen to this, we'll be really getting in the groove of getting ready for planting. On our farm, we grow corn and soybeans, and we grow some hay too.
That's great. And you mentioned businesses. Do you want to tell us what they are?
Yeah, my husband and I are kind of serial entrepreneurs a little bit. So we've each had our own small businesses. We've had small businesses together. We've had small businesses with friends and family members. Right now, the businesses that I am a part of is my business, Hungry Canyon, which I think we're going to talk more about later. But that's farm and ranch related greeting cards and gifts. And I also just started a new business with a friend of mine called Meet Me on Main Street. And that business is all about bringing experiences to small towns that you might find in larger, more urban areas that we like to take part in too in small rural life. So, doing small town events and highlighting small businesses and just bringing fun to main streets across rural America.
Oh, that sounds really fun. I think we'll have to get more into that one too while we're talking.
Yeah.
Melissa, I'd love to hear more too about was it Rural Route Rambles? Is that the correct name?
Yes.
I actually looked up coming over for it before I remembered that I was 6 hours from one side to the other, and that wasn't really
Tiny detail.
in the cards for a day trip. 12 hours of driving round trip.
Yeah.
So, obviously you come from a farm background yourself?
I do, yeah. I grew up on a farm and Angus cattle operation in Nebraska. I have 2 younger sisters. The 3 of us were very involved in the farm and cattle operation growing up, and still are to some point a little bit, each of us in our own ways today. My parents they were also serial entrepreneurs. That's kind of where I got it from. We lived right outside of Omaha, in a small town called Springfield. It was about 5 miles outside of the suburban area of Omaha. And so we took advantage of every niche market that you can imagine. So sold freezer beef, we raised broilers and dressed them out ourselves and sold broilers. We sold eggs. We had like 800 laying hens that we sold eggs in a fridge on the side of our house. To people. My parents had a pumpkin patch, they had a trucking company, a hay grinding business. Like the list could go on of the little side businesses that fit into the greater, overarching theme of the farm. But that's kind of where I think I get a little bit of that itch for doing extra little things on the side. So yeah, grew up in agriculture. I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and got a degree in ag communications. leadership education and communications technically, which I think all those things work with what I do today in all areas of my life. And then after college, I came up to Northwest Iowa and married my husband. And I've had 2 jobs up here, full-time jobs on the side of these are side businesses, you know. But yeah, that's kind of where my agriculture background started, was at home on the farm.
And then do you and your husband both work off farm or
Yeah, so I do full time. My husband, he farms and feeds cattle and has the cow herd with his dad and his brother. So he farms full time, and I work actually at Morningside University in the agriculture department, and that's in Sioux City. So Morningside is a small private college that has an ag program that's been growing for the last 10 years. They've always had an ag program in the past. It was centered around the stockyards, and a lot of students in that program at the time, they would work in the stockyards and learn commodity trading, livestock grading, buying, selling, all of that through work at the stockyards. And so when the stockyards died in 1997, so did the ag program at Morningside. And eventually this is a very heavy ag-related industry area, like much of rural America. Anybody, you guys listening, everyone, similar to that. And so there's people in the area that said, we need an ag program at one of the schools in Sioux City. And so Morningside said, let's start it back up again. So I actually oversee all of our ag students that we require to work in industry for 7 full months. They work full time for 7 months doing something that is hopefully related to what they want to do when they leave. And so that's kind of my job. I get to be a little bit of a life advisor to those college students in ag. And I've been doing this for about 5 years. And so I really enjoyed it, and I love getting to do that with these students.
so how much shit does your family give you for moving to Iowa? I mean, I know how much shit we give people for moving to
I
Nebraska,
know.
so I assume it's fairly
Well, and the
fairly
thing
even the
is,
other direction.
I grew up like almost on the border and moved to almost on the border, so like the animosity is pretty real. And I felt like there's more animosity to people in Iowa, like in Nebraska, like, ugh, Iowa, like you're moving to Iowa. And I legitimately cried for like every day for 2 weeks leading up to it, because I knew when I moved to Iowa, I was never coming back home, because I was going to marry Mark. I was going to live there. The farm is there. Like, you don't just up and move that. And so I did. I cried like every day knowing I was moving across the state or across the river. But like the thing is, everyone talks about football. Like, obviously Nebraska football is huge, but the thing is, we don't have other teams in Nebraska to support. Where in Iowa, it's kind of different. People who like Iowa State can hate the Hawkeyes and back and forth. So it's kind of fun. But yeah, I'm barely in Iowa, if I can throw that in there. I'm barely across the border.
I think one of the best things I've heard from doing the show for the last 2 seasons is how common that grief is about marrying into somebody else's family farm. That I had no idea how hard it would hit me that it's very unlikely that we'll ever go house shopping, or if we do, we'll be old and
Yep.
retiring. It won't be a like, oh, we're starting our family together. It'll be this is where we're going to die kind of a thing,
Pretty much,
which
yeah.
is not as exciting as, oh, we're a young married couple looking to start our family. It's, it'll be a very different transition. And it is hard to remember, no matter how much you love the farm, that this is where you're going to be unless you, split your family up. This is it. And that is
Yeah.
the goal, is for this to be it.
So I
Let's
said
get
earlier
depressing.
that yeah, wait, I said earlier we're feeding out my dad's calves from and I guess another side story, but my parents moved. They have 2 places in Nebraska. There's one by Omaha, and then just in the last few years they bought a ranch out in central Nebraska, and moved all the cows out there because, like I said, living close to Omaha, like, it was great for all these niche markets, but it also was miserable to raise cows outside of the city, and the city just kept growing. My hometown is actually now home to a Facebook data center and very close to an Amazon fulfillment center and like all these data centers. And that's actually part of the reason that most of the reason that we moved to the ranch was because a data center purchased our farm. And so it's like very bittersweet that the farm I grew up on is gone, but we got to move our cows to where they're supposed to be, quote unquote. And I forgot where I was going with that. What was I saying?
Maybe
Sorry, this is where I'm flubbing.
that's okay. Maybe something about like being tied to a
Oh, yes.
physical place.
So my parents moved all the cows out to the ranch, and now we get to feed the calves out in the feedlot that my husband and I work on, and he goes to work every day. And it's fun to mesh those two family businesses together, because when you leave your own farm, when you grow up with that, it's almost like you have to like re-find your identity, just like moving to a new area, but like re-finding your identity in ag as someone who's doing something. And that's been really cool for me to mesh those two operations together.
Well, and I think too, and I don't know how universal this is, but I bet it's fairly universal, that there's this sense as the wife coming in that you're not really part of it, that you're either, marrying for money or you're just putting up with it, and that those are kind of your two options, and that it's not possible that you might want to be there even on days that you resent it. There's always hard days, but
I remind my little boys, because every once in a while they'll say, "Well, Mom, you're not a farmer. Mom, you don't have cows." And I'm like, "Yes, I do. My name is on the note just as much as your dad's. I may not go there every day, but I go to my own job that provides a lot of benefits so that we can do what we're doing on the farm." So that's something that I'm very adamant about, incorporating into my kids at 2 and 4. Hopefully by the time and Mom drives tractors and can work cattle and do all that, but they don't see me get to do it every day. So I remind them often.
I think that it's a really hard thing to remember too, is how much that off-farm income makes the on-farm income possible, and it is really important for our children and for everyone else to see how critical that is. I know it certainly is for our family. So
Definitely. I definitely agree with that.
So, one of the things we want to talk to you about today, and the way that we actually found you, is through Hungry Canyon Designs, because some of them are hilarious. And so, tell us about the inspiration behind Hungry Canyon and what you're creating.
Yeah. So Hungry Canyon is a place for I say people like us, and when I say that, I mean people who relate to agriculture. We live the life, and I think when you know what I mean about people like us, you understand what I'm saying. And I wanted cards for people like us. When I was dating Mark in college, I went to go find a card for him for Valentine's Day, and anything I found that spoke to us, like cows or tractors or whatever, they were always the wrong color or breed. And so, like, anything with a cow was always a dairy cow, and we don't raise dairy cows, we raise beef cows. And anything that was a tractor was a green tractor. I could never give a green tractor card to my husband, who is completely red tractor blooded. And so with that ag communications degree, I knew just enough to be dangerous about graphic design and art and website design and all those little things that go into the branding and building of little businesses. And I thought, first I'm going to start by making cards, and I would give Mark a homemade card every year. And then friends would ask me, like, "Hey, can I buy this for my own significant other?" And so I started an Instagram page, a Facebook page, started a website, and started selling these cards, and it turned into a full-fledged business. So that's what I do. I make cards for people like us that relate agriculture in a funny or cute or meaningful way, for people to give greeting cards and gifts to people like themselves.
Melissa, I think the first card of yours that I saw was the one that says, I love you more than $7 corn, which
Very fitting for
is
this year.
totally people like us. Because, yeah, I feel like all the ag content I see is very, so God made a farmer and live, laugh, love. And, like, those things are all great and they all have their place. But my husband knows me well enough after 11 years together to know that that is not the kind of card that I would be buying if I had other options. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So
I
I was
always
very
follow
excited to see other options.
When I talk about that card, I love you more than $7 corn, I always follow that up with, and that's a lot. Because I really love $7 corn. Although, in the feedlot business, we don't love it quite as much, but taking grain to the co-op or, selling it in town, you like that $7 corn. But, yeah, and that's the other thing is like, yes, so God made a farmer and the cutesy, I don't know. I say it's almost like a little bit hokey. In my business, I say it's a little hokey. It is. But I get the guys to giggle and laugh, and like the gals, they see it and you're like, wow, yeah, that's like exactly what it's like. I like some of my favorite cards that I make are it's like farm wife advice. And one of them, and it's to be given for like bridal showers, weddings, things, friends, whatever. But some of them, like the one that makes me laugh the most is men are only capable of multitasking when operating a loader tractor because they're running their feet pedal and the joystick at the same time. And if you've been married or you have a long-term husband, boyfriend, spouse, friend, sometimes it's difficult for men to multitask, but when they're running the loader tractor, man, they know what they are doing. And so you get it. Like it makes you laugh and chuckle, and it's true.
There we go. And I know what you mean too about tractors being the wrong color. I married into an Alice family, and every time
Ooh.
our little boy says John Deere, it's like I can see my husband just dying a little every time. And trying to find anything with Alice Chalmers on it it's hard.
Noted. I'll make a note here. Orange.
Well,
My kids
just,
love the orange tractors,
yeah,
so
bust out the colored pencils and just color it
yeah.
in yourself. Make a little DIY set maybe. So how do you come up with your ideas?
They come straight from the farm. I feel like, and my husband is a very big help. Like you wouldn't think that some red-blooded, God-fearing American farm boy is going to be like the creator of all these poetic cards, because some of them are pretty poetic and like heartfelt. But Mark is very creative, and he's the one that he's on the farm every day, so he kind of knows the style of cards that we come up with, and so there'd be days when he's scraping yards at the feedlot or running the grain cart or whatever, and he'll send me just 10 texts in a row of all these ideas, but they come from the farm. So like sometimes I feel like when I don't get to go work cattle or don't go get to help with harvest or go work on the farm very often because I'm preoccupied with a full-time job and my kids and the house and all that kind of stuff, like I get into these creative dry spells. But when I'm on the farm, like that's where we come up with the ideas. And when Mark has these ideas and he'll send them to me, it's my job to kind of make them into something that I know people will buy or something that will speak to people in a pretty way. So we make a good team that way.
So what's your favorite thing that you've made?
It's like you gotta say pick your favorite kid, right? That's what everyone says.
Well, that was actually my next question, is for you to pick your favorite child. So it's a good warm up for you.
The minute.
Yeah. The one who's causing fewer problems at the moment, right?
I think it's like probably one of the very first cards that I ever made, and actually I think my sister actually helped come up with it. But and I have different favorites throughout the year depending on the season of life or the season of whatever. But one, it was love is getting the gate, and then love is signing the operating note. And the little line that I always say is, people like us understand that love is getting the gate, but even truer love is signing the operating note. Like, you are signing your life away. You are just as much a partner in that operation as anyone else who signed that operating note. But that's love on the farm. So that's a favorite. Some of the baby cards I've made have been really fun. There's one, it's things a cattleman should keep to himself when his wife is pregnant. And it's all the things that I won't admit if my husband said these things or not, which, yes, he actually has some of them. But like, you're not supposed to say anything about like average daily gain or udder score or taking the chains to the hospital, pulling chains to the hospital. Like, those are little things on there, but
Yeah, Katie and I are
they're
both
good.
nodding because we're both from livestock
Yeah,
backgrounds too. Yeah. One
yeah,
line I think I've heard before was, "Well, it's nothing I haven't seen before."
yeah, yeah. Excuse me, I'm a bovine midwife. Let me just step
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, it's very similar to yeah, all the other
I'll say
calvings I've
too,
seen.
if you mention back fat thickness, that's not going to go over well. It's just not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
calving
huge
ease.
Yeah.
yeah.
Calving ease, estimated progeny difference was one I heard. Like, no, nobody.
So like those are fun, and I think that they don't. And I will say a lot of my cards have puns, which I think are very clever, and I like to be clever. But the ones that I really like love the most are the ones that are just like relating something on the farm in a meaningful, cute way that we just get. So those are kind of my favorites.
I have to say, too, one of the things I appreciated was that looking through your catalog, I didn't see anything that was too like, oh, men, they're so helpless and stupid and useless. Because there's a lot of things where our husbands just don't get the practice. You know, we see so much crap about, men can't dress babies. And I'm like, well, if I do it 99% of the time, why do I expect him to know what he's doing? But there's so much negativity towards letting men figure stuff out. And I mean, there's definitely a time and a place to make fun of them, but it's kind of obnoxious when people are making money off making fun of them. Like,
Yeah,
I can make fun of my husband, but Hallmark cannot. Like, you could make fun of my husband because you have a husband who is the same sort of person, I would guess.
yeah.
But
But yeah, I totally agree with that. And there's like, I mean, I'm can only do the things that I do because my husband is as involved in the family and in the home, and me on the farm opposite. Like, we could the two of us can only do all the things that we do because of the other. Like, there's no, I don't know. And we all have our jobs. We each have the things that we do that are the other one doesn't, but I can't do it without him. Any accolade or project or anything that I complete or get is because I have a supportive husband who's able to do that. So,
Yeah, and that gendered, like whether it's in good fun or not, but some of that gendered, like, oh, women are this way, men are this way, women can't do this kind of stuff. Like, when we complain about being typecast as women or men, it comes from that place, right? Like, if we're trying to assert ourselves as women and finding roles for ourselves in agriculture, then we have to both fight against those stereotypes about us as well as not play into the stereotypes about men too, right? Like,
yeah,
it comes from both sides. Like, we need to kind of lay off on some of that, that judgment or that negativity around, well, they can't do this or we can't do that kind of stuff, because we all know people who are doing it no matter what
exactly.
gender they are.
except
Well,
for
and I,
that one about, sorry, the one about being able to multitask when they drive a loader tractor, I prefer to think that it is proof that they are capable of multitasking and they are
yes.
just not being their best selves and
Yeah,
applying
they have
that
it within
knowledge.
them. They really do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
And
skill, right?
I'll say I'm the first person to cheerlead any, like, women. You can do it. Like, you can do anything you set to your mind to. But I say that about anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm not like that. I listen to some people on the radio or on TV, and you hear all this feminism monologue, and I'm not a, woman hater. Like, I think women can do anything, but I think we also do so many things because of, and men have the things that they can do too. And so there's like, we can't do it without the other. So there's just a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah. So you mentioned your other business. Remind me, is it Meet Me on Main?
Meet Me on Main
Meet
Street.
Me on Main Street. So I'm curious about this. Are you hired by small businesses to run events, or chambers of commerce, or both, or what is the
That's a
model?
good question.
Okay.
We
You're just
started
getting
it
started.
because my friend Marissa also she lives in town in Mobile, in the town that we claim. And the two of us have, over the last 2 or 3 years, put together some events that highlight small businesses in small towns. And like I said, bring like experiences that you would find in an urban setting to a rural area. And so the first event that we put together was called the Rural Route Ramble. We put it on 3 years ago in 2020. It was a weekend before the holidays, where it kind of started out where we said, hey, we both had party buses at the time. My husband and I had a small business where he and his brother owned a party bus, and we would be rented out and people could drive it around, or we would drive it around for people. And Marissa, her family, also had a party bus for personal use. And so we're like, we both have buses. Let's get together and find some friends, and we'll go visit small businesses, because in our area in Northwest Iowa, we have some incredible small businesses in teeny tiny towns that are just doing amazing things both online and in brick and mortar. And so we thought, let's get in the bus, take our friends, we'll go visit these businesses. And then the more we got into planning it, we're like, this is bigger than just a bus. We need to tell everybody about this. So I think we started planning it like in October, and the weekend was one of the first or second in December. In 2020, where people, like small businesses, were hurting. There is so many people who they had very little business the months ahead of that. And so we wanted to make a big, difference for these small business owners and friends. And so we put it together, put it out online, and said, here's the towns that we're showcasing, here's the vendors. We charged a little vendor fee that we used. We used that vendor fee to promote the event. And then people really, really loved it. And so we did it again last year, and it was even bigger and better. I think we went from having 35 vendors the first year to about 50 last year. And then this year was even bigger and better. And we had over 75 different vendors in 13 small towns across Northwest Iowa. And it's really fun. And we kind of jokingly call it the magic of the Rural Route Ramble, but it does feel magical. You're out there with thousands of other shoppers visiting these small businesses in tiny towns, or even not in towns. We have businesses that are out on their farm in rural areas that are just killing it in small business world, and showing people who may not know about that business before, show them who they are, and then give them a taste of it during that weekend, and then they know about them the rest of their life. Like, they can go shop there anytime. It doesn't have to be the Ramble or Christmas. So that's kind of where it started. Technically, we were kind of funneling all of that funding through my Hungry Canyon business, and it got big enough where we're like, this has to be its own thing. We have to have its own business. We do other events as well, kind of playing on the same theme of small business highlights. But we have Marissa, she has a small business space in Mobile on Main Street that is available for rentals. And so it's a boutique rental space, and it's just a really nice thing to have in our small town, where people can rent it for a baby shower or a work meeting or whatever. But we host small business pop-up shops and charcuterie workshops, and we have a list of ideas of all these things that we can host in there. But eventually we'd love to be hired by, maybe, possibly. She also has a full-time job. We got to see where this goes. But, one thing we're working on this quarter is community event kits. And that's something that I've worked on personally in the past with some other projects that I've done. But, I want to take the things that I'm doing here, these events, these projects, these promotional things for commodity organizations and ag, take what we're doing here, put it into a kit and sell it to someone so that they can do that too, because there's movers and shakers in every town. They just maybe don't have the resources or the know-how, or they want a step-by-step process of how to do what we did here in where they live. So that's kind of the next steps of that model. But it's been a really fun thing, and it's really cool to do the things that we're doing in small town America, in the country.
I love the
Yeah, that's
idea of
really
having
neat.
a
And
kit too,
sometimes,
because as someone who's also,
oh,
oh, go ahead, Arlene. Okay, well now I'm just going to keep talking. As someone who's involved in a lot of community stuff, when you're trying to get relatively younger folks involved, I think we're more likely to still have full-time jobs. We're more likely to have little kids, especially if you're talking about farmers. We've got all of that going on. And so I think for a lot of folks, there's enough energy to do the thing, but there's not enough time and energy to reinvent all the wheels to do the thing. And
Absolutely. That's exactly it. Like, here's what we purchased and where. Here's how much we spent. Here's what you think about when you think about this, this, and this. Here's what you say when you call a business to ask them to donate something for this project. That's what I want to give you, so that you can take that and just literally recreate it. And I'm absolutely open to people putting your own spin on things. You absolutely should. But here's the basics of what it takes to do the bare minimum, and just go do it. Let's just do more good. Let's do cool things wherever you are.
Well, and I think even when you're, talking about multiple groups in the same community, there's so much, well, our group is doing this and this group is doing this, and they might be doing, the things they're doing might be 95% the same, but because they're different groups, they can't possibly work together. And it's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources.
It's frustrating, for sure.
So, what are some of your future goals when it comes to Hungry Canyon and to the farm?
That's a good question. I am the personality type that likes to set goals and have goals, but I also don't really take dedicated time to set them. It's just like, oh, I think that would be cool. Let's do it. So I don't have legit set goals, especially, and we're recording January 4th. So I should have, if you're the personality type to set goals, I would have done that recently. But I think my goals are just to do, as like I said earlier, to do good. I feel like my business is a fun, it's a creative outlet for me. When I'm teaching college kids, I don't get to be as hokey and creative as I maybe was in my first job, which was teaching elementary kids about ag. I got to do the creative stuff and the crafts and the things, and I don't get to do that as much. So Hungry Canyon has been a great creative outlet that way. And then just to keep on keeping on. I think people talk about oh, I want to thrive in the next year. I'm just trying to survive. We're getting by, be the best that I can for my kids and my husband and at my job, and try to do all the things, but knowing full well that that's not possible in every area of every life. So I think with Hungry Canyon, I would love to create more of these community event kits. And it meshes really well with that Meet Me on Main Street. And so it's kind of a joint project there. But I want to be able to do cool things in other people's towns too. That's kind of a motto that Mark and I have at home for the last few years is, if you want cool things to happen in your small town, you have to do cool things. You sit around and no one's going to do them for you. If you're not going to do it, it's not going to happen. So that's why we're involved in Farm Bureau and cattlemen and local politics and church and fair and all these little things, these volunteer opportunities, because we want these things to be around for our kids and also for us to enjoy too. So being able to emulate that in these kits and help other people do that in their own areas, I think is one of my main goals for the next little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of those activities I mean, it's easy to complain about, oh, well, they don't think about young families, or they're not catering to us. But if you're not, at bare minimum, providing input, and, like you said, hopefully finding ways to be more involved than just providing input, then we can't really blame organizations for not catering to us if they don't know what we want, or what works, or how things have changed, or, being willing to change what they're doing to meet the expectations of the community.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So I was thinking about your job at the school, and I'm someone who's got a couple of teenagers, and I'm wondering if you have any job search tips. It sounds like you would be the kind of person who would be good at helping our teens and young adults find work. Do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I do. I that's my job here at Morningside. So I get these students that come in as freshmen in college, and I'm in the ag department specifically. So the the young adults that I'm working with specifically know that they like agriculture for some reason. And so some of them come in and they're like, I know I'm going to go home to the family farm. I'm just here to get the degree. Mom and dad told me to do it. Or I know I want to learn X, Y, and Z when I'm here, and then leave and go do this job. But some students have no idea what they want to do, and that's okay too. I tell them it's no matter where you're at, you can always figure it out. But a lot of times I teach my students, I get them freshman year in a class, and then one of the first things I have them do is a job shadow. Low consequence. You're not contracted, you're not getting paid, you're not doing a job, you're just there to see what that job is like. So maybe someone knows that they like the food industry, the food service industry, or they like greenhouses, or they like whatever. Go see what someone does in that job for a few hours. I make them do 12 hours for the assignment, and then I have questions and an assignment that goes along with it, but it's no consequence. Like you can leave and never go back again. And then the next step is, if you liked it, okay, let's see if you can do an internship or a part-time job. If you didn't like it, okay, cool. That's really good to know. I'm glad you know that you don't like that. Let's do something different. Maybe it's related to what you were looking at first, because you obviously were interested in that for some reason. So what part of it did you like? Was it the people? Was it the industry? Was it the topic? Like, what part of it was it? And let's find something that's relatable but not the same, and see if you like that. And so helping them go through that step and do the internship, and then the more experience that they get. And that's our slogan or motto at Morningside, is experience matters. And the whole institution is very in tune to giving students experience, because you leave school, and what do job seekers or people who you want to do business with, what do they look at? Your experience. What have you done? Where have you been? What have you learned? Like, not necessarily what have you learned in a class or what does your degree say, but what have you done and experienced? And so getting out there and doing that, I think, is probably the best advice that anyone could give someone who's looking for career advice, whether you're in high school or out in adults. Like, if you're not happy with the job that you have, what part of it do you like and what parts do you not? There's other things out there. Ask the questions, follow someone around, do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes knowing what you don't want to do is just as important as knowing what you do want to do, right?
Absolutely.
Crossing a few things off the list is
Yeah.
a good step. And better to do that before you get a degree and decide at the end that
Yes.
it really isn't the path you want to take.
It's so sad to me to see students leave after paying for 4 years of college and still not know what they want to do. And I like to think that we know enough about what we're doing here. I've been in my job for 5 years now, so I've seen 5 groups of students leave, and the longer I've been here, the more it's been like, okay, those kids know what they're doing. Like, they have a good idea. They're going to go out and they're going to move mountains in whatever part of the industry they're going into, and I can see that, and I'm thankful that I get to be part of that, but that we are really in tune to doing that here specifically. But Yeah. It's sad for me to see people leave and not know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's also important. I'm guessing in the internship program that the kids, even the ones who are going back home to farm, have to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and with them, I say this, and I do some of the recruitment for the ag department too. So, like when I'm meeting with students that are in high school looking to come to Morningside to get an ag degree, I say, the ones that say they're going to go home to the farm, like, I have a soft spot in my heart for you. That's what my husband does. That's what my sisters have done. Like, that's what we all married farmers, like, that's what we do. We did that. And so I'm going to work with you specifically to find out, what do you need to learn to take back to your farm. You're
Hmm.
not going to go home and be a hired man. You're going to go home and be a partner in your operation. Like, is it marketing? Is it crop scouting? Is it livestock? Is it like, what piece of ag do you need to learn about to take back with you? And let's do that while you're here at school, so when you leave, you can go out and be a force on your own operation.
Yeah, that's right. And make the contacts that you need for the future, right? Not just the
Yeah.
contacts that your mom has, that your dad has, that you already have in your community, but a wider range of people that you can draw on in the future. So yeah, that place is yours. And just the experience of having to listen to someone other than mom or dad or
That's a big piece
grandma
too.
or
Yeah.
grandpa or yeah. Ha-
Mom and dad aren't so bad after going somewhere else or something like
yeah, that's right.
that. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so great too to talk about job shadowing because it seems really unfair that we're asking 18-year-old kids to pick what they're going to do forever, with most of them very, very little experience at the thing that they're picking. And so it seems pretty uncool to be like, hey, just come up with something that you think sounds interesting or that somebody might pay you for, and then commit the rest of your life to that with no real understanding of what that's going to mean for you.
Yeah.
Um, so you're raising two little ones on a farm, and one of the reasons we started the podcast was because of the isolation that comes with being a parent, especially in rural areas. So what was that transition like for you to move into being a mom as well as a complete human in your own right?
I think that, if we talked about this earlier, but like, my husband had a big part in that. He has, as much as he's involved on the farm, like, he is the one that comes home, and if he makes supper, he makes, or gets home in time for supper, he's there, and he is someone that's, helping mind the kids and tell them that they have to eat their vegetables, and helps with bath and bedtime, and that kind of stuff, and takes them to daycare in the morning. Like, he does all the things that you would hope would be in like a 50-50 parenting situation. And so that was really helpful, especially because I moved away from my family, and I had two sisters who, we all three are having kids at the same time, and all three of us live in completely different places. I'm 2 hours from the one and 7 from the other. And so, the three of us, we talk about how we each don't have help in our own way, um, whether that's being close to home or not close to home. And my husband's family is very helpful and involved as well. So, they're very helpful. So that has been good. Um, the part about like watching kids grow up on the farm was always like, I don't know, a dream. Um, like, Mark and I both did that. We lived that life growing up, and we wanted that for our kids. And so it was important to do the things that we do so that we can live on the farm and raise our kids on the farm. And when I first had both kids, I feel like social media is different today than it was even 2 years ago. Instagram specifically, I have built a lot of my business through Instagram, and have quite like a good following, and felt like I had a really good community on Instagram leading up to um, the pandemic. And then I don't know what happened with social media, like algorithms and community, and it's different today for me, and I think for a lot of people too, than it was before. And I really found community in farm moms on social media because, like you say, it's isolating. Like, you don't go to town and, go to a tennis club or to like, you maybe make it to story time at the library, but you don't have all these things that these podcasts are telling you to do. And so, I found those people on Instagram. And my second kid, Charlie, he was so colicky when he was a baby, and he cried constantly. And I would share about that on social media, and I don't know how many moms messaged me and would like talk me off the ledge of, how hard it is because they went through it too, and here's what they did. And so having that community, like, that was a real thing. I felt like I had to like explain myself when I would tell my husband what I learned from someone on the internet, even though they're just like us. They just live in a different place, and it's like you found that community. And I'm like mourning Instagram a little bit because it's not the same as it used to be, because I really loved that about social media. So that was helpful in that transition. But yeah, I think having kids on the farm is, to me, it is living the dream. Being able to take them outside and, see the farm like through their eyes, just like we did when we were kids. I love that. There's nothing better for me.
So have they started telling you guys how to run the farm yet?
Yeah, I think that it's funny, I was just going through all my posts on Instagram from last year as like a nostalgic rabbit hole thing I did yesterday. And one of them was, it was going to be really soon before we could leave the boys in charge of the farm and leave for the weekend, because they know a lot.
Lots of opinions, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, this feels like a good place to put in a plug, not just for you, Melissa, but for our listeners, that one of the things that Katie and I did start along with the podcast is a Facebook group. So if you look up, it's in the show notes, but the Barnyard Language Podcast group is hopefully a place where we can have those kinds of conversations and look for support, and also share the, funny stuff that maybe non-farm parents don't really understand.
Arlene and I actually met in a Facebook parenting group for ranch moms that was a spin-off from another parenting podcast. But one of the things I remember the most about having that first kid was all these people who were like, well, I can't cloth diaper because I'd never put poop in my washing machine. And I was like, I wouldn't have a washing machine if I had to replace it if it got poop in it. Like, we are not samesies, obviously. And parenting is hard enough without having to explain stuff like that to people.
We just did it.
Yeah, like, we just
like
have to
us.
buy new clothes every day. Like, that would just be the end of it.
Sometimes I do try to keep the barn clothes and the other clothes in separate cycles, but I mean, even that doesn't always happen, right? Depends how.
I at least try to keep the chore clothes separate from like dish towels.
Yeah.
That seems.
Yeah, you're delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I try to separate, but the whole like I would
Not
never
by
wash
color.
anything with poop. I was just like,
That's
that's
hilarious.
exactly it. Like, how dirty is it, and with what? Like, that's what I separate by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of already mentioned this, but what for you is the best part of raising kids on the farm, other than kicking them outside whenever they?
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah.
I think it's being able to see the farm through their eyes, and like, I don't know, it's so funny. Like, and I think every kid does this, but like collect rocks, or like they find the manure pile that maybe accidentally had a dead animal in it, and they go find dinosaur bones, or they like drag stuff in the house, or what, it's just like funny, because your mom and your grandma and your great grandma, they all had the same experience with their kids when it was their age, no matter what time of life.
The collection of cow teeth. Does anyone else have one of those?
Yeah.
They are very funny looking.
My child is only collecting live animals at this point, so
you are so lucky.
That is what it is. Yeah, the girl child is lobbying for another cat, Arlene. Melissa, we already have 5 cats in the house, but she thinks that we should bring Biscuit in from the barn as well. So
that's how it works. Yeah, you start with one.
Yeah. So, what do you find to be the most challenging part of farming, of parenting on the farm?
The most challenging part of parenting on the farm. Um, I think that winters are hard. Um, the I this year when you talk about New Year's resolutions, I saw someone post something recently that was like, I'm not counting numbers in 2023. And I thought I really liked that. You're not counting calories, you're not counting your weight, you're not counting, how many hours of this you did. But I just printed out a calendar because I am keeping track of a couple of things this year. And one of them is number of hours outside, because that's how good is it for your kids to just go be outside? How many problems do we have in life because there's too many people that sit inside too much? So I am tracking that, and I'm tracking the number of volunteer hours we do this year just to have an idea. But like the winters are so hard inside when your kids just want to be outside so badly. So I think that's maybe the most challenging part at this age, at my toddler stage.
Our almost 5-year-old son has a forked stick that he keeps all summer to plow the front yard so that he can prepare it for planting. And he went out yesterday and plowed snow with it. So,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
it's a
it's
sport, right?
it's getting to that point that I'm like, I don't. If it's above zero, you're going outside. I don't care. Sorry, kids.
Yep.
I can't with both of them in the house.
So I was looking at your Instagram. We've already talked a little bit about social media, and I noticed that you talked about your mom being diagnosed with cancer this past fall, and I was wondering if that was something. I know that's her medical stuff, and I don't want to know details necessarily, but I was just wondering how she's doing. And you mentioned that it was cervical cancer, and I just, as another woman, I was wondering, like what types of things we should be looking for, like what's a symptom, and yeah, how she's doing, and how you're being a supportive daughter from a distance and with all the other stuff that you're doing in your busy life.
Yeah. I don't think I am an expert by any means in any of those categories, and there's a lot of growth that I can do in each of them as well. But just like overarching, I can say mom is doing fine for now. She's going through chemo treatments, so those are about every 3 weeks, and she's doing that with the hope that we can do some surgery to remove some masses from inside um, here in the next 2 months or so. So we're being hopeful that way. um, as far as like keeping a watch out or symptoms, I don't know if I have any specific advice except to go to your doctor. I think a lot of times, like, okay, here we are. We live how many, and I live an hour from the doctor. I know there's people that live way farther than that. You get busy with life, you get busy with your kids, you get busy with work. Um, Go to your doctor's appointments every year. They are important. They are um, another thing I think we can think of as people in agriculture, farmers, and people in rural life, like, oh, I don't need to know, I don't need that. I don't need that person. I don't need to go to the hospital. I don't need medicine. And that's not what they're going to tell you every single time, but go to the doctor, find one that you trust, and keep up on your appointments. And then if you think something's wrong, go get it checked out. Like the worst they're going to tell you is, or the best they're going to tell you is, oh, no, you're totally fine. Everything's good. But what if it's not? So um, go to the doctor. And as far as being a supportive daughter, I talk to my mom on the phone. We text the sisters and I, and mom and dad. We all have Snapchat groups and send pictures of the kids and that kind of stuff. And we were just home for Christmas, which was really good to get everyone together and do that for a couple of days. And but yes, technology is amazing. My kids talk with grandma on FaceTime and check in with grandpa on FaceTime, and they do all those things. So everyone's trying to make the best of it and be optimistic and hopeful.
Yeah, so we will hold space for her too, and hope that all of the treatments that she has coming up go well, and that her and her doctors have a good plan moving forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I think it's critical to point out too that I know so many people who've been in that position and they don't want to waste the doctor's time because they're sure it's nothing. And I guarantee that your doctor would much rather see you when it's nothing than to have something.
I think that's true too. When you circling back to like new parenthood, your kid like kids are just sick constantly. No matter how much you try to build their immunity by letting them eat dirt and manure and play in the barn, they still get sick all the time. And go take them to the doctor. Like they're not gonna shake their head at you for coming in and getting checked out. And so I think that is relatable in every age of life and in all parts of this conversation is just go.
Well, it's absolutely a privileged thing to say too, because I know not everybody has health insurance or good health insurance, and not everybody has a choice of other doctors. But if your doctor's a dick and makes you feel like you're being stupid for being there for whatever you're there for, you need a new doctor.
Yeah,
That's not on you. That's on your doctor. Um, I just,
100%.
even if you are overreacting, your doctor should still not be a dick about it. We ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
Oh gosh. Hmm. Well, every year I do try to enter something in the county fair. Another one of those things like they're not going to keep having the open class building at your county fair if people don't keep taking stuff in, no matter how old you are. So I make sure my kids and I always enter a few things, and I always take cinnamon rolls. And this year I was beat by a third grader. I'm not happy about that, but it was I do try to take a baked good. Um, so I probably have to say some kind of baking, even though I was just, routed from my champion cinnamon roll at the county fair. But
Are you going to have like a grudge match
I am, yeah.
situation
I
next
think
year
her
with this
grandma
kid?
made them. I think her grandma made them. She didn't even
Ah,
live in the county, so
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
I'm
ringer.
not holding a grudge. You can
that's
tell.
Not at all.
seems
Not at all.
questionable. Yeah, cinnamon
Yeah,
rolls are
I
pretty
thought so
complicated.
too.
I mean, fine if you're going to make them, at least put your own name on them, right? Like,
I know.
go ahead,
Yeah,
go ahead, Grandma. You can meet Melissa, but not your
yeah.
granddaughter. So I guess we'll move into our cussing and discussing segment. We've registered for an online platform called SpeakPipe, where you can leave your cussing and discussing entries for us, and we will play them on the show. So go to speakpipe.com/barnyard language and leave us a voice memo, or check the show notes. I think the link's in there. Or you can always send us an email at barnyardlanguage@gmail.com, and we will read it out for you. So Katie, have you remembered what you're going to cuss and discuss this week?
No, and now I'm going to get a little meta about it. I am cussing and discussing, having to remember what I was going to cuss and discuss, because I had some really good thing to cuss and discuss this week, and it's totally gone.
It's disappeared.
So, yeah.
We'll
it's
probably
making me
remember as
mad.
soon as we stop recording.
Oh, I'm sure I will. Or I'll wake up at like 3 a.m. and be like, this was the thing. At my normal waking up with music from Encanto stuck in my head time, I'm sure I can also wake up with the cussing and discussing topic in my head. Melissa, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
So is this anything like a
Anything.
petty? Okay, I have something I just thought of. This is something that I will fight to the death. And it is when people are on TV and they say they're from a small town and you Google their town and it's like 20,000 people. Because that is not a small town.
Yes.
That is a city. So people who say they're from a small town who aren't. That's what
Yeah.
I cuss.
Not
Yeah.
fair.
No. They don't
So,
know.
what is the population boundary for a small town
Oh, and
in
I'm
your
probably
mind?
gonna get heat for that,
No,
but
do it.
I feel like a small town is like 2,000 or less, and that's like big. Like a 2,000 is like the cutoff. Because if you're like over 2,000 or 2,500, like you probably have a big grocery store, a couple gas stations, a McDonald's, maybe some kind of fast food restaurant. 2,000. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I think that's a decent number.
20,000 is not even close. That's not even a town. That is a city.
So, Melissa, other hard hitting hot take. When you take your kids to State Fair for the first time, will you be going to Des Moines or to Lincoln?
Ooh,
Oh, yes. This is a
that's a good
big,
question.
big
It's funny.
Midwestern question right
So this
there.
is this is maybe the hot take in Iowa. We took them to the Clay County Fair this summer, and we consider that better than the state fair in Iowa. But that's the Western Iowa in me talking. So we haven't taken them to either state fair, but I don't know. It's about the same distance to both. So I did grow up going to the Nebraska State Fair a lot.
Yeah, but the Iowa State Fair has the butter cow.
I know they do, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, you could
I'm
take them to
not going to
both.
discriminate
I'm
on
sure they're not the
fairs.
same weekend. All right, Arlene, what do you have for cussing and discussing this week?
So I am cussing toll roads because I just got a letter in the mail um, recently. My daughter and I went prom dress shopping in New York, and I accidentally drove on a toll road. I forgot to put into my GPS that I did not want to drive on any toll roads, and it was on like I drove on and then back off again because that was like the way that it routed me. And they're just obnoxious. Like, why can we not just like have roads that everybody can use? Like, let's just like drive on the roads and not have to pay for them. I don't like it.
I feel like they're unfairly biased against country people, too. Because you always look like a jackass when you're like, I gotta find change for this thing. What is this newfangled thing? And
That does give me anxiety
Yeah, and like
when
yeah,
we're traveling.
yeah, these ones are just like they take your license plate and then send it to you in the mail. So, but still, it's like, oh, wait a second, that's a scanner thing. I didn't want to go on this road, but too late. And then you get charged for not having a transponder. Well, yeah, because I don't want to drive on this road. I would never plan to. So now I have to pay a US $2 and some kind of cents bill that I've got to figure out how to pay online someday. But yeah, just like let's just use our taxes for roads that everybody gets to use.
I was gonna ask if you needed me to mail your $2 in for you, Arlene.
I'm sure I can figure it out. It seems like there's an
All
online
right.
option, so I think we should be good.
All right.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa. If people want to find out more about you and your farm and your business, where should they find you online?
They can find me on Hungry Canyon on Instagram and Facebook. And I have a website. It's hungrycanyondesign.com. And you can find all the Hungry Canyon goods your heart desires on there.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming on, Melissa. Thank you for joining us today on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, we encourage you to support us by becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/barnyardlanguage to make a small monthly donation to help cover the costs of making the show.
Please rate and review the podcast and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Barnyard Language, and on Twitter, we are Barnyard Pod. If you'd like to connect with other farming families, you can join our private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We're always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch. We are a proud member of the Positively Farming Media Podcast Network.